First, if you are following along with this tutorial, you can hide the info panel to have more space in the UI. Pinegrow CSS Grid Editor now works with Tailwind as well, not just with plain CSS. So let's take a look at how we can use it. Here we have a sample page, kind of a simple landing page for our surfing hero, Wave McSplash, that contains the image, his bio, and links to various social media, plus some additional information that will not be the focus of this tutorial. So what we will do is use CSS Grid to create an attractive layout for the header area. Tailwind CSS uses mobile-first approach, which means that kind of by default the layout is defined for the mobile screen, and then on larger screen sizes we tweak the layout to take advantage of the additional screen real estate. For the mobile display, let's define a very simple one-column grid. So why do we need CSS Grid at all for the mobile display? Because everything is nicely stacked anyway. The reason is that CSS Grid makes it convenient to add like spacing between various elements. So why not? We can see that we have a kind of parent div that contains the image, the bio, and the links. So our CSS Grid will be defined on this element. Because remember, CSS Grid is always defined on the parent container. And then all the children elements kind of are arranged according to how the grid is set up. So to create the grid, to edit grid on any element, we select the element and then we have a couple of options. We could use the CSS Grid icon or shortcut Command G, or we click to open the context menu, and then here we have CSS Grid Edit Grid command. And this opens the CSS Grid editor. And on top we have the selector that lets us choose where the CSS Grid is defined. So we have these Tailwind options that correspond to different screen sizes, and also we can choose CSS attributes such as style attribute or CSS rules if there would be any active for this selected element, but in this case they're not. And anyway, we are interested in using the grid editor with Tailwind. So to define the grid for the mobile size, we just keep the all option selected and then click on Create CSS Grid. So this creates kind of simple 3-column grid by default, and because we want to have just one column, we simply delete the extra 2 columns. So now why is everything so squished together? Well, the reason is that here on the row we have 100 pixels, like that's like the height of the row, and in most cases instead of setting the height with pixel value, we can use auto, and that corresponds to content size. So whatever is the size of the content, that will also be the size, the height of the grid row. So if we take a look, not much has changed. And now we can set the gap to a value. Let's maybe try with 12. And we can see that now we have this comfortable spacing between the content elements. And as far as the small mobile screen is concerned, I think that's good enough. And now it's time to have fun and play with grid on larger screen size, where we actually have the space to use multiple columns and to come up with interesting layout. So again, let's open the grid editor. And this time we will switch to large size. And that is also the size that is currently displayed in the page view. So let's click Create CSS Grid. And now let's add more columns. Oops, by clicking here, so that we have kind of more maneuvering space for our layout. So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's do 6. And we can always add more, so it doesn't matter. We don't have to get this right from the start. And again, let's change the 100 pixels to auto. And we can also add multiple rows. Let's do 3 for now. And this gives us kind of more maneuvering space of how we want to arrange our layout. We define the gap on the all size. So this will be also inherited for the large size, unless we override it here. But let's leave it. For now it works fine for us. Let's take a look at how the grid is defined. We can switch into class tree, and to define the grid, Pinegrow's grid editor tries to use kind of predefined Tailwind utility classes, and in cases where those are not available, it uses custom Tailwind utility classes, taking advantage of the option to use the square brackets to use custom values in Tailwind utility classes. So we can see here like how columns are defined on the all size, and then for large we have 6 columns, and for rows we are using custom notation with auto, specifying 3 rows, each spanning the height of its content. And with that we can start to arrange our content elements. So let's select the image, and here we have a couple of handles. On each side there is a handle saying A. A means that this grid item is positioned automatically. Like we don't specify where it should be positioned, and then items are simply placed like in consecutive cells. But with the image, we would like to kind of have it as a background for the whole header, so we can now resize it so that it spans the whole grid. So it goes from from the first line all the way to the 7th line, and then for the height it starts on the first line, and let's take it down all the way to the 4th line. Now we notice that the rest of the content kind of moved down, and that's because for now it is placed automatically, which means the browser will place it in the next available space in the grid. So because the image takes up all of this space, the rest of the content is then placed underneath, and automatic grid rows are added to the grid to accommodate all the content items. but we don't want it here, right? So let's take advantage of another feature. So here we have handles, and we drag handles. So let's hold the element and move it, and while we move it, press down the Command key on Mac or Control on Windows and Linux, and this lets us drop the element into highlighted CSS grid cell. So let's try to place it here. Just release the drop, and here is our bio item, and now we can also resize it so that it spans to 3 columns. And again, if we take a look at the CSS, the Tailwind classes, we can see that it tells us where in the grid the item is placed, which is the starting column, which is the ending column, and same for row and start. So, okay, but now do you notice a problem? The element is placed on all size, right? There is no large prefix to these classes. So if we now switch into the all size, we see that our 1-column grid is messed up. Why? Because for this item, we said that it should start on the line 4, and that's why browser automatically inserted enough columns to accommodate this setting. But what we want to do is that this placement affects only the grid on large sizes and up, right? So let's switch back into large. And there are a couple of ways of how we can fix this. So first of all, why this happened? Why did the all size get set? And the reason is here in this selector, we had all size selected. That's like a default value. So it's something we need to be mindful of when we drag elements around, like to check which rule selector or which screen size selector is actually active here. But no problem. I made this mistake kind of on purpose so that I can show you how to handle such problems. So the easiest solution is to use Command click and select, like first of all, I switched into the tree view for our class properties. And then here, I will show you 2 ways, so you know everything. So anyway, one way is to switch into the class tree and then use Command or Control on Mac and Windows, Command select to select all the kind of grid location classes, and then right click on one of them and say move to variant large. So what happened now? Large variant was added to the element, and then all those classes were moved underneath the large variant. And if you now go back into all, you see now the item is here correctly, but we still see that the grid is messed up. So I suspect that we did the same mistake on our image. And I'm right, yes. When we drag the image in the grid, the all was active, and that's why this grid position is not only defined for the large size, but for the whole image. For the all size. So here let's fix it in a different way. So first of all, let's get rid of this position. by clicking here on grid item options, and then we say we select make this item auto positioned. So you see we again have A, and all those classes that define like the starting and ending column were removed. So let's switch to large, and now we can change the setting and select the large size. And now let's drag it. And going down all the way to 4. And let's check on all. You see here it's still automatically positioned, because now due to having this selector on large, the position was set on large screen variant. Let's go back to large. So this is okay, and let's also place the links. And now we are smart enough, right? We know what we should be mindful of, that we need this selector to be set on large. So let's do that. And then we will just use these handles, like the large is active, so we will use the handles to place the links. And should go from 5, should go to 4. Oh, we can't see our links. Why? So we can't see the element because it's covered by the image. So I'm not sure why, because it doesn't have relative or any like position property. But just how it works, I guess, in browsers. So here, for this content, we have position relative, and this causes it to kind of pop up, to be arranged by browser in visibility stack differently than if it's just statically positioned. So let's go here and also add position relative. Okay, you see I use the add class to easily add Tailwind class right from the tree class view. And we need some space here, so let's go into second column. But I'm not happy with how these buttons appear. I mean, this tag display is good for mobile screen, but not here for large, where we have so much space. So let's see why is this happening. And we can see that there is block property, block class on all of these items. So let's fix that, and we can be smart about it. So we can select all of these buttons, and then we can switch back into the visual controls, and let's find the display property, and we switch to large size, and let's select inline block. So now all of these buttons are kind of displayed inline. And what we can also do is make sure that there is enough spacing around them. And using margins and paddings, it's not really the best approach. Instead, we can use flex. So let's go up to the parent, because flex is always defined on the parent, right? And then here, notice that large is active. So we will say flex. And what we want is not exactly like this. We want the elements to wrap. And I always forget like the correct value. So this is really easy to play around. I just hover and I see what happens. So it seems we need like align items, baseline, so that everything is nicely ordered. And then we can go down into the grid where we have the gap properties, even though we could also have them in flex, but we just have them down in grid. And we can choose, let's say, gap 4. 4 is about right. So, but if we set the gap to 4, why is the vertical gap larger than 4? And let's go and investigate. And I prefer the tree view for these situations where we have to investigate something. And here we can notice that the parent have a space class defined. And we can just toggle it to see if this is the culprit. Yes, it is. So the space class kind of defines the margin of children elements. So let's leave it here on all as it is. And then on large, we can kind of disable it. So let's search for space y. So we can just type the class. And then 0. I'm guessing that this will do the trick. And enter. And I have this option, keep the menu open, active. So whenever I choose something, the menu stays open so that I can quickly go and find new properties. But by default, this is off. So yeah, now it's off. So when I'll just show you. So when we set a property, then the menu closes completely. So okay, now we have this space y6 on all size, and on large we turn this off by setting space y0. And now here we are using our flex to nicely position these buttons. But I'm not yet happy with the grid as it is now, because it would be perfect to display the bio up here, and then also to have some space down here. So let's go back, select the grid element, and go into the grid editor. And what we can do is, instead of using auto for the first row, let's try to give it fixed size. So this is better. So now the first row is 100 pixels, and it works as a kind of spacer in our grid. But buttons are now spread out too much. So this has to do with flex. So let's go here into the large flex setting, and just hover over different values and see which one does the trick. You see, align content. I always forget flex properties, but just hovering over these different values kind of reveals the one that works the best. So this one will this will align it on the top, and this one in the center, and this one at the bottom. This will spread it out. So I like this one, to align content in the center. So what else we could do? I'm not happy with how the black text kind of is covering a black image. So I would prefer to have bigger grid so that we have more options for how to place the elements. So let's go back into the grid editor. And now we have 1, 2, 3, 6 columns. So let's add more. So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 9. Let's do 11. you might notice that all are using one fraction, which means that available space will be equally divided between all the columns. But for the first one and last one, we can kind of use the fixed value to create some kind of padding around our grid. So let's say 40 pixels. And then we can always experiment with these values and change them. So let's see if this is better. And now we have to again rearrange the image. So first of all, let's see why the image is not covering all available space. Here, object fit, aspect ratio. Okay, so it is contain, but here on large, actually, we want it to be cover, so that it really covers all available space. And then let's resize it all the way to the 12th line. And let's also move the bio. This looks like a good position, so that it's not covered. And also the links. Let's do kind of dynamic layout, not go all the way here to the right side, so that these items are not aligned. I think it looks better. And one more thing, I don't like the padding around here, so let's select the div, and then if we go here, we see that the all size defines the padding, but we are now in large, so let's just say this should be 0 on all sides. How about really big sizes, like 2XL? How does that look like? It's still okay. But the buttons could have, I don't know, could have more space. Let's try that. So let's select the button container, and then let's go to 2XL, down into flex. So this is okay. And then we have gap. How about we say it should be 6? So now it's a little bit bigger. So that's one benefit of Tailwind. It's really kind of easy to handle all these different like screen sizes and variants without, messing with media queries and a bunch of CSS rules, like kind of all over the place. That's usually what happens to me when I'm using CSS. So anyway, this looks okay. Let's go to large. It looks okay there. Let's go to all. Yeah, looks a bit boring, but it's okay for mobile displays, right? And maybe the bio should be here, just under the image. Yeah, this is better. And with grid, because we placed all of these, all of the items we explicitly placed in the grid, this order doesn't matter. So if we go now to large, the bio is still where we put it. So, okay, let me show you one more very useful feature. So let's go into the grid editor, and instead of positioning grid items by their coordinates, we can define grid areas. So let's say this will be bio, and bio will also be here and here. And then down here, let's say this will be links. We want to keep the first column and the last column empty because this is our padding, like the grid padding. And then I just double click and say links. links, also links. Where should it end? Let's overlap them a little bit. Okay, so now I will close the editor and we'll select the bio. First we make sure that large is selected, and then here we can select the named area and we say, okay, this should be bio. And here it is. And then for the links, we can do the same and say, oh, these are links. So here for bio, you can see that we missed one column when we were defining the grid area. So I will go back into the grid editor, and it's very easy to change the areas. So now I will just click here and say, oh, this should also be bio. And now we have bio is like spanning 4 columns, 1, 2, 3, 4, just as we had before. But the benefit now is that the position is set directly with grid area. And now if we go into grid definition and if we change how grid areas are aligned or set up, then we don't have to change anything on the element, on the child elements. They will be positioned correctly into their grid areas. And you can notice that here for Tailwind we are again taking advantage of the custom notation with square brackets. This lets us define any CSS property as a Tailwind class. So in this way we use the CSS grid editor to create a nice grid layout. Now this beautiful page is done. We could publish it on Netlify. Classy hamster, that's a good address. Publish. And there it is, a cool static HTML page for Wave McSplash. So I hope you found this tutorial interesting. I really like these new Tailwind CSS features in Pinegrow, because not only that we can like edit CSS grid and all this do fancy stuff with Tailwind classes, we could even kind of convert all these Tailwind declarations into styles that then map into like regular CSS rules. So we could use Tailwind without Tailwind, but we have another tutorial on that topic, so I don't want to make this one like 2 hours long, that's enough. So yeah, grid is really powerful, and now you can visually edit the grid in Pinegrow for your Tailwind projects as well. And if you don't feel like going through all these steps by yourself, just switch to the project panel, and here you can find finish.html that has kind of the sample grid already implemented, and then you can just explore how it is done and play around and tweak the layout as you want. So have fun with CSS Grid. It's amazing technology, and Pinegrow makes it really easy now with Tailwind as well. Bye bye.